Fontaine's coming up shortly, and I want to bring to light 3 interesting characters that have shifted the air around the nation when they all dropped, and those are Freminet, Lynette, and Lyney, the 3 siblings of Fontaine known for their performative arts, each with varying levels of fame or infamy, whichever they prefer. Regardless, they're all an eccentric bunch, but as we dive into the lore, it gets even stranger. Disclaimer: this video will not be talking about any leaks, but I don't think there's been on any of them. I'm not completely sure, so don't worry about any kind of concrete spoilers here since I'm mostly just theorizing on the trailers and official introductions that they have. Anyway, let's begin. Let's start with the anticipated brother-sister wonder duo. Lyney and Lynette were the featured characters during the Genshin Impact About trailer. Fun fact, if you're a veteran in the lore theorizing community, you would have heard that really old theory that Lyney and Lynette were Sandrone, with Lyney being the puppeteer and Lynette being the puppet. Obviously, that's not true since we now know who Sandrone is, but that doesn't make Lyney and Lynette any less intriguing. Their constellations are known as Felis Fuscus and Felis Alba respectively, the dark and white cat. Their call cards are the top hat in the teacup, at least from what we see in the trailer. They also have their card descriptions. For Lyney, it's Spectacle of Phantasmagoria, while Lynette is Elegance in the Shadows. With the possible exception of the trials held at the Opera Epicles, Lyney and Lynette's magic show is without a doubt the best live performance in the court of Fontaine. Judgment uses truth to deliver justice. Magic uses facade to reach people's hearts. They are also the core analogy and narrators for the whole theme of the eyes believe what they see, as they're the surface metaphor for Fontaine's extravagance. Let's start with Lyney. He is the primary voice in the trailer that describes the atmosphere of Fontaine as being more than what meets the eye. He continues the narration by stating 3 important things. People expect their eyes to tell them the truth, everything is a controlled show, and magic is what you see with your own 2 eyes. His introduction text has the following description about him. On stage, Lyney is a great magician in the eyes of all. Off stage, he's a reliable older brother, courteous visitor, and devoted friend. His every move is a pleasant surprise, every word a reason to smile. His whole being is like an indecipherable enigma that you just can't help trying to solve. If you suddenly find yourself so close to him that you're confiding your innermost thoughts, don't be too surprised. And it's that last line that really makes me interested in his character, especially with how insightful he is, with how Fontaine's glittering gold are prominent cogs in the wheel. Now for Lynette. She's referred to as the more quiet of the twins, but nevertheless shares the limelight with her brother. In direct contrast to her older brother, who refers to himself as the greatest magician in all of Tivat, Lynette might possibly be the lowest profile magician's assistant in the land. She seeks neither flowers nor applause, avoids interviews, and generally tries to avoid notice. Whether people are trying to attract her attention or simply curious, she shuts them out with bizarre responses like entering standby mode and I need to space out. Only the very few among them, in the briefest of interludes, sense for a millisecond that they are secretly being watched. But by the time they try to locate the source of the gaze, it has already vanished without a trace. Yet the only people in the room are Lyney, warm and hospitable as ever, and Lynette, whose undivided attention is being bestowed upon a teacup. Whether you would like to theorize that she is or she is not human is up to you, though honestly, I'd like to believe that she's just quiet. Freminet is the new addition to the siblings, which is really a pleasant surprise. According to the quote in his introduction, Lyney and Lynette have been trying to get him to smile for a while. He had only recently smiled when a dove emerged from Lyney's hat. Freminet is relatively timid and shies away from the spotlight despite his siblings being famous magicians. Other people's gazes, responses, and comments make him uncomfortable and interrupt the rhythm of his breathing. He prefers to slip away and bask in the weightlessness of the ocean, pouring his heart out toward a maritime flower. There's hardly anything to know much about Freminet except that he enjoys diving, which may have been where his name came from. But other than that, we can only theorize about him, and the prevalent theory at the moment is that he's keen on talking to inanimate objects. His social skills aren't the best, and while that is greatly valid, his constellation is also known as the automaton, which is suspicious. He also opens the line of the trailer by saying that he has a mission. Also, apparently in Lynette's introduction, Freminet was talking to a vacuum cleaner and scolding it to not mess with Lynette after the 5th transgression this month. And when you look at his design, he has a mysterious device attached to his back, which is meant to assist in diving. He also has the most steampunk aesthetic amongst all 3 of them, whereas Lyney and Lynette have the magician-esque flamboyance of 1920 magicians and the roaring jazz era aesthetic, Freminet has the fantasy industrial age aesthetic. It's also cool that he's holding the bell in this card, when in the reveal of Lyney and Lynette for the first time, they were in front of a clock where you can hear the slight ticking of cogwheels and whatnot. Now, let's begin with their theorized connection to Arlecchino. In the trailer, it is revealed that the person they're performing the show for is Arlecchino, and that she was scolding them for thinking themselves as magicians when they were in fact actors first and foremost. It also doesn't help Arlecchino's current stature and the presence of the orphanage she is currently the head of. So the prevalent theory is that Arlecchino is currently in charge of the 3 siblings. It also doesn't help knowing Arlecchino's current stature and the presence of the orphanage she is currently the head of. I also like how their color palettes kind of complement each other, with black and white being their primary motif with their individualized accents of red, teal, and pink. But their genetics are what's most curious. Lyney and Freminet look relatively human, but Lynette has feline features. Freminet also has theories of not being organic, but honestly, we could just theorize that he might just be shy. So I want to discuss their origin. The first theory is known as the orphanage origin, in which they were all family from the House of the Hearth. Considering their young age in the present, it's possible that they were adopted very early on, especially with how close they are with each other. Lyney being aware of how charades and pantomime works in the realm of Fontaine, and Freminet mentioning something about a mission. I like to believe that their parents are most likely half human or half hybrid, considering that Lynette has that kind of genetics. Whatever happened to their parents though is going to be up to us to find out when they finally release as characters. What's also nice is that this means that the 3 of them could have Snezhnaya names similar to Alfonso, to which they could have possibly just replaced the names with Lyney and Lynette to keep up the duo act for the magicians. Freminet though seems to have the diversions, considering his occupation as a diver instead of something that targets the surface politics of Fontaine. It's very much possible that he was specifically designed to delve into the more ancient aspects of Fontaine, especially with underwater cities. Most of the ruins of Fontaine exist underwater, so to have a sleeper agent be able to access that kind of archaic history is very crucial. Whether or not you respect the theory that Freminet could possibly be human is not relevant here, but it could also be added that in the event that he was an automaton that doesn't require air, it would actually be pretty smart to send him down there. But just from the description that we have, he's just a professional diver. It's also mentioned though that Freminet doesn't take public commissions, but is nevertheless well versed in his craft. So my guess is that Lyney and Lynette's main role is to be the eyes and the ears of the Fatui for the political affairs of interest in the court, since the location that Lyney and Lynette perform in might be the primary location of judicial matters, it also doubles as a performance hall. It would also make sense for Lyney to be the more vocal of the 3, considering that he is the oldest. But I don't completely think that they're loyal to Arlecchino. It takes the right time, place, and people to truly control the show. I wonder if that's also how he sees Arlecchino, thinking that she's just a part to play for the comfort of himself and his siblings, like a means to an end. That would give their character a layer of agency, while also cementing Arlecchino's prestige as a good bargaining chip for loyalty. We all know that all 3 of them are going to be playable, so we need to theorize this with the assumption that regardless of the storyline, we will end up in relatively amicable terms. This is just a core design philosophy at this point for Genshin's characters, but that doesn't mean it has to start this way. It's possible that the cutscene with Arlecchino has already foreshadowed that they're actors, that she might as well use to infiltrate the court of Fontaine, especially since Lyney and Lynette are already prevalent icons in Fontainers entertainers. This would actually be similar to 2 other instances of people from the House of the Hearth being sleeper agents in their original nations. The Odochka had Inazuma lineage and was sent to Inazuma to pose as a shrine maiden when she came of proper agent training, but this isn't really limited to playing just matchmaker. Orphans became the perfect agents after their successful indoctrination into the cause of the Fatui and the House of the Hearth. It's also easier to manage orphans versus actual soldiers, for the sole reason that they don't know anything else besides the orphanage. A good example is Trophin, who posed as a Fontainian and infiltrated Gardarvaville to assist in the Torres plans. I'd actually be really interested in this kind of dynamic between the Traveler and the trio, especially since we've seen the reverse be fulfilled. Antagonists being relatively amicable or friendly towards the Traveler upon playability has been a trope done before through Tartaglia and somewhat the Wanderer. So the reverse of a betrayal would absolutely hammer in their uniqueness as characters and the core theme of Fontaine's Smoke and Mirrors. They could be aware of the Traveler's endeavors through the court, or even find a way to manipulate their reputation in such a way that favors Arlecchino's endeavors. I mean, friends in high places are a really important asset to have. As for their different lineages, it could be one of several things. One is just the genetic makeup that Hoyo decided for them, with little rhyme or logic, where the latent feline features only manifested in one of them. It's also not like Lyney is completely free of the feline allegories either, considering his constellation and the cat sigils on his costume. But if we're going for the Fatui orphanage theory, which is a bit more morbid considering everything, I wouldn't doubt that experimentation is an unfortunate possibility. But I really doubt that's the case, since the orphanage, as far as we know, which isn't that far, doesn't have the same cruelties as the tourist funny farm because they're actually being treated like potential citizens of Snezhnaya. I also find it fascinating that Arlecchino scolds Lyney and Lynette like how a parent would chastise a macaroni drawing. Arlecchino believes that magicians and magic from their perspective is too mellow of a word to describe the performative role the twins play. And if we're following the theory that they're sleeper agents, I can see why Arlecchino is scrutinizing Lyney's perspective of fun. Being an actor means donning a mask both in and outside of the dazzling performance, whether it be through political, social, or economic pursuits. She most likely thinks that their magician role would only limit their potential as agents, considering the eccentricity and juvenility of measly card tricks or drowning your assistant being reduced to something just, quote-unquote, fun. Now for the contradiction. If we're going to theorize that they're connected to Arlecchino, we also need to theorize that they aren't connected at all. It's also very much possible that they're just accomplices or were truly just performing for Arlecchino, much like how aristocrats would book private shows from popular entertainers. It's also possible that Lyney and Lynette were just examples that Arlecchino was comparing herself to, in which she's the central star and ridiculing Lyney and Lynette's role as magicians. I can also see this moment as her thinking that Lyney and Lynette's acting abilities are wasted on magic tricks, which are nice on the surface, but aren't nearly as flexible as the acting that she's about to do. Lyney and Lynette could be the representation of the entirety of Fontaine, of which the extravagance of the court is fun, but nevertheless unable to reach far beyond surface-level amusement. Except that she, a good actor, can control all facets of the show, unlike Lyney and Lynette. But that's it for me today. What are your thoughts on the siblings? I personally like them. Well, I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. Do you think that they're really going to go against the Traveler and Paimon as Arlecchino's spies? I am curious though. I really hope that they are part of the orphanage and that this isn't just a red herring. I do hope that that theory is correct. But anyway, my name is Aster and thank you for chilling with me.